start this call with some wins. We celebrate them large or small. If you have a win, I would love for you to unmute and just tell us what's good, what has been happening, whether it's a small win, personal, business, we want to hear about it. So if you could unmute and tell us what's been going on, that's good. Going once, going twice.
We had a win.
Tell us, Clayton.
We closed 2 jobs this week. One for about 100, and then one for about 340.
Hey, that's huge, Clayton. Congratulations.
So we've got 5 that we're working on.
Ah, it's going to be a big year. That's phenomenal, Clayton. So exciting. Appreciate you sharing. Anybody else have a win this morning? I'm seeing a lot more people coming on in. We're going over wins if anybody has one, large or small. It's springtime. I know that things are starting to pick up for a lot of folks. I know that there's good things happening. I think we're just feeling shy and sleepy this morning, maybe. Going once.
Springtime. It's 34 degrees in Massachusetts and Vermont.
Oh,
It's just
no. Oh, gosh. Well, in Oklahoma, we've been hitting 70s and 80s. It's been a little bit colder this week, but we're already like gearing up for summer here. Um, well, I've got a couple wins from a few of my clients. One, Garden Diva. They've been a client for over 5 years. Love Garden Diva. They do custom metal art. It's kind of a unique one of our clients. We don't have many custom metal artists. I think they're actually our only one. But she just went on vacation for 10 days and came back with no issues in the business. Didn't get one phone call while she was out. And so that is a huge win. I know a lot of you guys, that's why you're coming to Redmond Growth, is you want to build a business that's not built around you, but can still grow. And so we want to celebrate Garden Diva. And then if there's any other wins before we get this show on the road here today, we'd love for you to share.
I've got one to throw in here. So I've got a client that does like residential turf, so you put down either a putting green in your backyard, if you want turf for your pets, just make it easier on you. He helps you out with that. And got him on Google Local Services, and within the first week, he had tons of calls and had actually closed and completed $43,000 worth of jobs in just the first week. So got him on Local Services and rocking and rolling. So that was a big win.
That is huge. So much more to come. Google Local Services is such a good tool. If you're not on Google Local Services yet, if you have no idea what we're talking about, please reach out to your coach. We've got so many resources for you to send your way. It's such a powerful tool when done correctly. But Alyssa, I will let you go ahead and take it away here, girl, for our group call here today.
All right.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to get my screen shared.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I didn't know I was muted. I started talking and had nothing to say. So while this is getting that pulled up, something that we are wanting to do, probably starting next week, is provide opportunity for these calls to be more than just us talking at you guys, but also more of that dialogue kind of experience you've had maybe in a couple of these past few calls. So next week, before getting into the content, along with talking about wins like we always do, and we will still continue to do that because it's important to start out with what's going well. We're also wanting to open the floor for just like general questions that you may have. And we'll talk about that in the emails that get sent out, kind of let you know about the group call. But yeah, want you to come with things that you're thinking on, or what your biggest limiting factors are, or things that are going on that are issues or things that maybe need some improvement or need spoken to. and we'd love to talk about that during that time. So think about those questions this coming week, as well as you start seeing those emails.
All right. So a couple weeks ago, Robert talked about how to hire your dream team. So today I want to go over managing and leading that team. So we'll get into this further, but to put it simply, it's important to have effective team leadership and management, because if you don't, it's going to lead to having an ineffective business. It's going to have a negative work environment, a lack of growth, disengaged and low performing employees. I could go on, but these are the last things that you want in any business. So it's important to lead and manage your team in a way that's going to benefit and grow your business. So there's so many principles that we could talk about, but I picked out a few today that I think are important to discuss. And I want to help you put those into action to develop yourself as a leader and manage your team. These principles are going to be fostering a company culture, successfully communicating with your team, holding your team accountable, and inspiring your team. So fostering a company culture is something that requires commitment and consistency, but it's important for employee satisfaction and for your business's success. Um, Fostering this company culture is going to lead to attracting and retaining top talent, increase productivity, and it's going to create a sense of purpose for your team. And this is something that you have to be intentional about. You have to intentionally set your company culture, because if you don't, then your employees are going to determine the culture. And when this happens, it can really lead to chaos because they aren't thinking about how they're setting the culture that day, and they just do it. So if you have employees, who aren't doing a good job or they have a poor attitude, it's going to bleed into the rest of your team and it's going to negatively affect your business. So, part of fixing this is being very intentional with who you hire and who you're keeping on the team.
That is such a good point, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to who's ever had that coworker that you're just like, gosh, they are such a Debbie Downer. They have no
Mhm.
work ethic. They are so annoying. Can I get kind of a show of hands? Who has experienced that? I see Jordan raising his hand. Elias, Elevation Plumbing, Clayton. Oh yeah, we've all dealt with it. Maybe it's a subcontractor. Maybe it's a freaking customer that you've worked with for years, but they just drag everything down. It's miserable to work with them, miserable to be around them. That one bad apple will spoil the bunch. And it really does start from up top. If you, as the leader, are not cultivating that environment, if you're not leading by example with your attitude, with how you show up every single day, then you can't expect your team to have that attitude.
Mhm.
But if you've done everything you can and you still have that Debbie Downer on your team, and maybe they do great work, but nobody wants to be in their truck, nobody wants to go with them, it might be time to have that hard conversation to set those expectations. And I believe, and Bryce, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a group call about firing. And so if I'm not saying that should be your knee-jerk reaction, that should be your first, let's attempt to make it better. And I think in that group call, we kind of go over the steps before we get to firing. But what Alyssa's talking about here today, fostering that company culture, that leadership, your
Mhm.
team is a big part of that. And so if you need help, let us know. We'll get you a link to that group call.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Several of those points are actually coming a little bit, further along in the presentation, but I'm glad you made those points. Moving on, another thing that you have to do is, identifying and defining your core values that represent your company and letting those serve as the foundation of that culture you're setting. And I'm going to say this several times this morning, and Nicole already said it, but you have to lead by example. As a leader, you must, embody those core values and those behaviors to set a positive example for your employees. Set that example and let them follow suit, because your employees will follow your lead. Another way to foster that company culture is creating opportunities for your team to connect. People want to feel, a part of a team and something bigger than themselves. So creating these opportunities and encouraging your team member connection is so, so important. You know, this can be by having an occasional event outside of work or even during work hours, just having some time for your team to build a relationship that's more than just work. And lastly is appreciating your team. People want to feel like they are valued. Recognize and reward those employees who are representing those core values. And by doing this, that acknowledgement will reinforce those desired behaviors you want from your team, and it's going to motivate others to do the same. And then also celebrating successes as a team, you know, that's going to boost your morale. It's going to continue to reinforce those company values. So, effective communication is just the cornerstone of success in any business. You have to have communication if you want a successful relationship with your employees. And encouraging open communication is what's going to build trust among you and your employees. It really is just essential for establishing a positive work culture. You want your team to feel like they can approach you with concerns or anything that they have going on. You want to build trust by being vulnerable and transparent with your team. Encourage them to show their weaknesses and mistakes and come to you with their concerns. If they feel like, you know, you're being genuine and you have time to listen and want to listen, then they're going to talk to you. And having that open communication is also going to encourage your team to share ideas, and it's going to foster more of a collaborative and problem solving environment. And again, by leading by example, you know, if you do this yourself, then your team's going to follow your lead with this. Better communication is also going to ensure that you're clearly conveying your expectations to your employees. And it's going to lead to them having a better performance if they know exactly what they need to be doing and exactly what's expected of them. And to do this, you must set clear and tangible goals with your employees, which we're going to talk about more in the next slide, but I wanted to go ahead and put it here as well. Part of having that effective communication also is addressing conflicts and concerns immediately, which Nicole also kind of touched on this. You want to you want to embrace those difficult conversations. You don't want to let things linger. If an employee, you know, isn't um, taking you seriously or meeting your expectations, or they say something off-putting to you or someone else on your staff, whatever the situation may be, you don't want to wait until you're so fed up with them and ready to fire them on the spot. Go ahead and pull them aside and address it. And communicating in this way is going to resolve conflicts then and prevent issues from escalating. If you aren't addressing your employees when they aren't upholding your standard, then other employees are also going to think they can do the same. Now, communication, it's not something that's going to happen by accident. You have to be deliberate with it. It it is it's something that is, you know, it's going to take some time, but you have to just be so deliberate and so intentional with having that open communication with your team. And one way that you can do this is by scheduling that reoccurring one-on-one time with each of your team members, where you can check in on them, check in on their progress, address their concerns, and provide feedback for them. By doing this, you can enhance your team's performance, and it's going to boost morale because they're going to know that you care and you're being diligent about checking in on them.
Real quick, Dale, I know that you're Dale with Arnold's Plumbing. I think I saw you jump on this call. If you're still on it, I know that you don't have a microphone, but I would love for you to type in the chat if you can. This is something that Dale has started to do, is one-on-ones with his team. Now, I'll tell you, and Dale will admit this, there's been times he's been a little bit reluctant. Dale's a little bit old-fashioned, and he's the kind of hardworking guy, which I imagine all of you are too, where you don't need to tell him twice to do something. He just does it. And he's never had to worry about his emotions affecting his job. You know, like like those are two separate things to him. What's happening on the outside world, what's happening personally, how he feels has never been something that he's had to worry about when it comes to his job. And that's for the 15 years he's been running his own company and all of the years prior that he was working for people. And so when we started growing his company and he started adding people, managing people, I remember him coming to me and being like, Nicole, I don't understand why we're dealing with feelings so much. Why are these guys so emotional? Michael, I see you laughing. Mark, I see you laughing. I think this is something you guys can relate to. It's like, why are we so emotional? Why is my job as a business owner, now that I'm not in the field, why do I feel like I'm running a daycare and I'm having to deal with these moody little toddlers? And it's true. It's part of it. It's a hard part of being a business owner. And I would say one of the hardest is just managing your team and having to manage their emotions and their feelings. And it's a little bit something that we just have to mentally accept. That as the business owner, this is my role now, is managing these emotions, managing these feelings. What Alyssa's talking about here, if you feel like somebody's upset, if you feel like your other employees are not enjoying working with somebody, if you feel like you need to praise somebody, your feelings are probably not off base. There's probably an elephant in the room. If you're starting to get that intuition, have a one-on-one. If it needs to be addressed with the team, address it with the team. As the leader, as the business owner, it is your job to address those elephants in the room. It's your job to pull people aside when they need to be pulled aside. That's your role in the leadership. And I know it's a little bit tough dealing with those feelings. You're like, this was a lot easier when I was just a plumber in the field. I didn't have to deal with this crap. Why can't people just do their jobs? I know. And if we need to work through it together, please reach out to your coach if you're having a hard time patiently managing those conversations, because it does require a lot of patience. Just don't hesitate to lean on us to help guide you through that. But Dale, if you still are on here, I'd love for you to kind of put in the chat how those one-on-ones have gone with you, because I know for him, he had one guy who he was a little bit worried wasn't going to make it, that we were going to have to let him go. He started having one-on-ones with him and just really setting expectations, encouraging him, letting him know what he is doing well, what we need to see. And this guy's now running his own van, bringing in more than our weekly minimum. And we were worried that this guy wasn't going to make it. We weren't going to be able to keep him.
Wow.
And so these one-on-ones are so powerful. Don't underestimate the power of communication.
Thank you for that. Yeah, one thing that I should have touched on in the beginning is that every business owner here is having to manage a team, and managing people is incredibly difficult. And that's why all of this is so important, is because you're having to do it, and you want to do it in a way that's effective, that's gonna be beneficial to your business and growing your business.
And another thing, real quick, on just the scheduled reoccurring one-on-one time, or just communication not happening by accident, with the one-on-ones and your team meetings. Without those, the communication, either one of two things happen. There's absolutely none, and your employees give you, there's no communication there, or it happens constantly, all the time. So by creating that predictable feedback loop where people know, okay, well, hey, on Thursday I'm meeting with them, I can talk to them about this then. Or, hey, I know on the team meeting I can bring this up then. Without that, the only other option they have is to either stay quiet or blow up your phone. And that's what leads to having those constant interruptions, the phone calls, the text messages from people all day, every day. So by channeling that into one place, you're fostering the communication, but you're also controlling it a little bit. You're telling it where to go. So that can just, if you're somebody that feels like your phone's constantly blowing up from your team, you're having to answer a million questions, that's a great way to put that where you want it to go.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is, 100% right. I really like how we do that here at Redmond Growth by having our weekly team meetings, and it's time, for us to address concerns and things we have going on. So those one-on-one meetings or the team meetings are super, super important. So the most important thing, in managing a team is holding them accountable for what those core values are and those expectations that you set. And really, it's just, it's essential for driving success and achieving results. And in order for us to measure this progress of your team and hold them accountable, you have to have key performance indicators. Most of you should already know, what these are and have these set, but if you don't, They can be, how many daily appointments you want set for a salesperson, how many quotes you have going in, or how many quotes are getting accepted, how much income tax are bringing in, or how many Google reviews you want to get. Whatever you want it to be. You just must set that realistic and specific goal. It has to be very clear in establishing, that goal and communicating that goal as a performance expectation. The goal isn't a dream. It has to be something that's achievable, and it has to be specific. You don't want it to be a range, like you want a tech bringing in $5,000 to $10,000. It has to be a number that you're able to celebrate when they hit it. So once you have that goal, and you then have to, figure out how you're going to communicate it to your team. And by doing that, you want to empower them to take ownership of that goal and of their work. And an effective way of doing this is, by having those team meetings we just talked about and clearly establishing those goals and those expectations. Then you have to have regular check-ins. And again, having that team meeting or that one-on-one time, it's a perfect opportunity to review that performance regularly and hold your team accountable. Your team has to know that their performance is being evaluated and that you're taking these goals seriously, but you also want to, encourage your team to hold each other accountable. And then you want to celebrate those successes. When they hit that goal or they're close to achieving it or they're making progress, you want to recognize and reward your team members. When they're meeting that, when they're exceeding your expectations. And you also want to identify their failures and address whatever challenges they may run into. If they aren't meeting expectations, ask them questions of why they aren't and make adjustments from there. It's an opportunity for you to provide guidance and support. And by doing this, you're just fostering a culture of like continuous improvement, and you're embracing accountability, which is just ultimately going to lead to your business's long-term success.
And this goes right along with what, I don't know if you guys saw what Dale just put in the chat. This is the client I was bragging about who's doing the one-on-ones and doing a really good job with them. But what he says is it's important to nurture your employees and bring them along only as fast as they can take it in. Your employees are a big investment that we need to capitalize on. One thing that I want to emphasize there is one thing that Dale does a really good job of is meeting the employee where they are at. You're not every single one of your employees is going to be that A player that you don't have to worry about. Those are a rare breed. We can try to cultivate, we can try to get as many of those as possible, but you might have somebody who's a really hard worker, has a really good attitude, but maybe they're just a little bit forgetful. And so we just need to build out a checklist. We need to hold them accountable to using that checklist. What can I, as the business owner, do to be able to empower this employee, to be able to meet them where they're at and be able to really help nurture and guide them and turn them into that A player? And so Dale, really appreciate you putting that in the chat here.
So speaking of players, is anyone here a basketball fan? Anyone? Travis, is he there? So I'm a big basketball fan, especially March Madness, which is going on right now. Final Four games this weekend. So do you think an uninspired team is going to make it to the Final Four? No, they aren't going to. They have to be inspired, but they have to have a coach that is motivating them to meet their full potential. Just like it is in basketball, it's the same with the business. If you want to win the game and you want to hit your goals, you have to have an inspired team, and that's going to lead to the overall success and the overall growth of your business. Now, how do you do this? You start by, again, leading by example in everything that you do. Set a positive example through your actions, your attitude, your work ethic. If you're holding your employees to a standard, you need to be holding yourself to that standard and more. Even in your imperfections, if you own up to your mistakes and you set that example, your employees are going to be more inclined to do so as well. And even as a business owner, you don't need to be perfect. When something is your fault, own up to it, and your team's going to respect you for taking responsibility for your actions. Be like a mentor and a coach to your team. You want to invest time in them, just like we talked about, where we have this one-on-one time set with each employee. It's a great time to check in on them, show that you care about them. As someone that's more than just an employee, you care about them, as a person as well, and challenge them about their goals, encourage them to achieve their full potential, and then provide, support and resources for your team to be able to succeed, and offer them with feedback and guidance to help them grow. So I wanted to kind of end this presentation with this quote that I really like, from a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey. If you haven't read it, you really should. It's a good book. But he says that management is efficiency in climbing the ladder of success, while leadership determines whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. I like this quote because it shows the distinction between, just management and leadership. I think a lot of the time when we're managing a business and a team, we tend to focus on how we can effectively navigate tasks and processes to achieve results. But in doing that, I think we also forget that we have to lead our team in the right directions by setting a vision and inspiring them, and then guiding them to the ultimate goal of the business.
That's a great point. I think a lot of times we get so focused on just the efficiency side of things. Are people doing, how well are they doing their job? But
Mhm.
really, it's easy to lose sight of, hey, are we headed? Is everybody headed in the right direction? Are we headed in the right direction together? You know, um, we just as technicians, as skilled people, we get so caught up in just that side of things that I think that's a great point.
All right, guys. Do you guys want to
Yeah.
stay?
Yeah, I think maybe staying as a group. I know we've got a good amount of people here, but I think I kind of like having it where we're all together, asking questions, getting feedback. I think it's really nice for you guys to be able to hear from everybody and hear everybody else's questions. I think I'm already seeing a hand raised, and if so, that is exciting to me. Elias, do you have a question?
I think it was earlier whenever you were asking anybody feel
It's
this way.
left
It was one of those
over.
hand raises from Elias. Yeah.
Damn. Got me excited for nothing. So, any questions? Maybe you're currently dealing with an employee situation that you don't know how to handle. Maybe you're just having a hard time keeping yourself motivated to motivate your team. Maybe you're dealing with an issue where you have somebody who you're a little bit worried is not going to make the cut. Anything that we talked about today is just fair game. So any questions, concerns, grievances, would love for you to unmute or type it in the chat.
I have a question.
Yes.
What are some, some key themes that we could, I know throughout the meeting you were talking about kind of like praising them, nurturing them. But say we wanted to put this into effect today, what are some things that we can bring up in a meeting to try to encourage them and motivate them?
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like practically, what can I start doing now is what I'm kind of hearing you
Exactly.
ask. Yeah. So it sounds like you do meet with your team almost daily, which is awesome. It sounds like that's something you're already doing. So love that. We start off every single one of our meetings the same way we start off this meeting right here. And we talk about wins. We talk about client wins. We even celebrate personal wins. If somebody is having a personal win, it can be a little bit awkward, just like how it was a little bit awkward this morning when you guys were being a little shy on me. Okay. when yourself ready, if you have an employee who is standing out, if you have somebody who is crushing it, if we landed a job, if we wrapped up a job on time and under budget, have something kind of in the bank that you can celebrate. This is also a little bit helpful to you as well, because when you're in the trenches, when you're in the middle of it, when you're in business owner survival mode, it can be a little bit hard to recognize what's going well. And so kind of looking for those wins personally before the call can honestly put you in a better mood and make you realize, okay, it's not all bad. There are some good things going on. And so that's the first thing I would do is I make sure that every meeting that you're having, whether it's a 15-minute huddle, we're praising somebody. We're talking about what went well yesterday, what went well at the last project. We have something that we can highlight would be a big thing. I also would really emphasize goals. What's our goal as a company? What's our goal for the day? What's our goal for the week? Um, Top of mind awareness, accountability, encouragement. It's also creating this like team. We're a team here who are actively working towards these goals. We're holding each other accountable. It can really help create that positive environment. Bryce, Travis, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing, but that's kind of where I would start.
Oh yeah, that's good. Definitely gives me something to work on.
Yes.
I saw a comment from Jordan come through. He said, I learned a lesson recently on how important it is to introduce new members of the team properly and encourage them to get to know one another a little better. Helps to remove unhealthy competition and a great team building culture.
Yeah, actually, I was going to point that out as well. We, egg on our face a little bit, didn't really properly introduce Alyssa before she started talking this morning. I think we've introduced her in the calls maybe once or twice before, at least in the breakout room. So some of you may know her from being a part of some meetings or things like that. But Alyssa's one of our new coaches, and we're having her start taking on a lot more of those responsibilities, and she's doing a great job. So, yeah, I want
Thank
to
you.
celebrate that for one and introduce Alyssa. But yeah, I saw Jordan's comment come in and go, whoop.
Oh, egg on our
We
face.
missed
Yeah.
that one.
And one thing that Jordan kind of said here, and this is something that is kind of hard as the business owner because you are so focused on like the practicals. What do we need to do to make the business grow? What do we need to do to serve this customer, to serve this job? And sometimes we can kind of neglect our employees as like individuals who have lives outside of work. They have goals outside of work, they have passions outside of work. And so one thing that I would really encourage is to getting to know your employees. I'm going to brag on Dale again with Arnold's Plumbing because this is something I know that he does really well. He knows his employees' kids' names. He asks about them. He knows their personal goals. He wants to help get them to those personal goals. And it doesn't mean you need to be your employees' best friends, but what I will know is if they know that you as their boss care about their passions, their family, their personal goals, they're going to care a lot more about your business and they're going to care a lot more about your goals. And you're going to be able to kind of tie them together. If we're able to hit these goals as a business, it's going to allow me as your boss to be able to give you this bonus, pay you more, give you this benefit, whatever it is, which is going to help you get to your goal. um and so just don't neglect that. Get to know their goals, get to know their passions outside of work, learn to kind of celebrate that and relate the business goals kind of to helping them get to their goals.
That's a great point. I was lucky. I had a manager that I worked for, probably the best manager that I've worked for. And what made him great was he was obsessed with almost every one of his employees' goals. He maybe cared about them more than a lot of people cared about their goals themselves, and he would bring it up. So you start work there. After just a little while, he'd ask you. He'd figure out like, hey, what's motivating you? What's your big goal outside of just here? What's your big goal? Like, what are you going after? And then he would follow up with you just periodically. Hey, are you making progress towards this? How's this going? He'd give maybe little nuggets of advice. And what that did was it created a lot of very loyal employees that were willing to go above and beyond for this guy. And so he created a culture even though it was a larger company, it had about 100 employees that he had managed that were willing to do whatever we needed to get done. If there's a deadline to meet, there was always somebody willing to step up. And outside of just that paycheck that you got every 2 weeks, it really provided a ton of value from that job because you had somebody that you felt was on your side, pushing you to do more do better. And sometimes that was directly related to work. Hey, if you do this, yes, that could impact your check. That can allow you to reach this goal. But sometimes it was just hey, are you taking the steps outside of here to get to where you want to go in life? Because I think more and more that is true. People aren't just purely motivated by money, right? That is a big motivating factor. But when it comes to inspiring your team, how do I inspire my team? Well, you make it bigger than just a job. You make it about helping them, the job being a vehicle to get them to where they want to go in life.
And that's something that we preach here at Redmond Growth to you guys. The business is your vehicle to where you're trying to go in life. You might not be somebody who's super passionate about plumbing, but you know that your plumbing company is eventually going to get you to the point where you can spend your time, doing your passions or being with your family. Spencer, I think this is a new hand up. I think. If you have a question, I would love for you to unmute.
Yeah, so I guess just looking for some ideas or advice. Our company does concrete coatings, so basically epoxy and resin and stuff like that. And it's pretty labor intensive just because the prep work for it is grinding, dirty, dusty, moving heavy machinery, stuff like that. Right now, we're kind of in the growth phase, trying to, get out of the installing ourselves and stuff like that. And so training people to do it. It's not really an industry where you can just find like, oh, you've worked for another company, come over here. It's pretty slim. It takes a lot of training to recognize variables that could make your whole job go bad. Something very minimal that if you don't catch could, cost you a lot of money. So it's kind of just difficult. The thing that I have in my mind is how do I make it so that I can't be on every job while I try to run the other stuff. And so sometimes I feel like I'm throwing the guys to the wolves, like they're doing jobs without complete training or somebody there the whole time. But at the same time, I have to leave and go take care of other things or administrative things. We are also, in poor weather for our kind of work. A lot of our stuff is exterior. Garages or decks or driveways, things like that. So it's kind of slow. And so my challenge right now is trying to help these guys understand that I can't be on the job the whole time, but at the same time, when I leave, I'm not just doing nothing because then, like I said, it's still kind of a slow time of year. So that's my challenge right now. I don't think that I need to be reporting to my employees of what I'm doing with my time every day, but I do have this kind of feeling that they're thinking like, hey, well, why aren't you here if we're not selling a ton of jobs? And at the same time, like, what are you doing when you're gone? So that's my challenge right now.
Yeah, I know you guys hear from me a lot, so I'll hopefully have one of the other coaches get some input here. But I saw Dale put in the chat for you. One of the things that he said is train up one of your guys and have him supervise. That was before kind of the end part of your question there of how, you shouldn't really have to be in a place where you tell your team, like you're being managed by them in a way, to have to tell them what you're up to when you're not on the job site. I know we've been working on the business rocks to be the start of those things, but if you're casting the vision, with the meetings, the team meetings and the daily huddles, saying, hey, here's what we have going on this week. This is what we're looking for in terms of jobs. This is what we have to complete in order to get onto this next job site. I think that's all that your team necessarily needs to feel comfortable in that way, to know that, okay, there's the vision casting, the future prep that's being done in the business. But I'll let one of the other coaches give some insight as well if they have.
Yeah, I think Dale has a really good point. Eventually, you do need to have some type of crew lead or project manager or right-hand man, whatever you want to call it, who's kind of going to be able to be your eyes when you are not there. Really challenge yourself of saying, I'm not going to be able to hold somebody's hand every single time. What do I need to do to really empower and equip them to be able to make decisions and to be able to know what they do on the job site? Do I have checklists? Do I have, when you get to a job site, here's all the things you need to do to start your day? Do I have an outline of the job? Do I have a checklist for the end of the day stuff? Do I have a checklist for a lead guy to be able to check quality of work and to be able to report back to me what's going on? Have I really done everything in my power as the business owner to be able to really equip these guys to not need me? And so that would be something that I'd really ask yourself and kind of challenge yourself to, because we can't really expect people to know our standards or our expectations if we've not done our due diligence. And by doing that, you can have these checklists that people can turn into you at the end of the day so that you're not having to be at the jobs constantly. You're able to kind of monitor from afar. Um, and again, I'm gonna go back to Dale. Eventually, you are gonna need to have somebody who can be your eyes. You're gonna be kind of capped if you're always the only person who can manage, and check on things.
I think another thing with this too is once you equip them with the tools that they need, I think part of it too is letting them know that you are confident in them and their abilities. Like you have full trust in them that they can handle it without you being there.
I agree. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, needing more elaboration, feeling like we're beating a dead horse? Just tell me where we're at. How are we feeling? You can type in the chat. Philip, yes. I think you might need to unmute. I see you trying.
Trying to mess with it. There we go. I think we got it. Now, one I wanted to ask is how do you gain clarity in it, right? You sit down and you review certain projects or tasks or whatever with your team, right? And at the end of it, they're like, got it. Cool. We're on it. And then they go out and they go to execute it and they did it like completely backwards or not even like in the remote realm of what you just explained to them. So how do you actually get across the clarity on whether they're asking questions to you or we're trying as owners explaining things to them? So what are steps we could take to actually make sure that what we are expressing is getting, how do you actually put that, getting interpreted properly?
Yeah. Do you feel like, Philip, that are you just verbally communicating things, or do you have like a checklist or a process, or do you have it written down somewhere?
No, I wouldn't say it necessarily goes with this the system and processes. It'd be more like the verbals,
Yeah.
like, hey,
So,
can you go pick up this box and deliver it over here and then pick this up, and like
yeah.
just kind of the weird random things, or like, hey, I need this stubbed out. This is how I need you to rough it in, right? You draw
Yeah.
them a picture, right? And then you come back and you're like, dude, that's like on the opposite side of the house, right?
Yeah.
It kind
Yeah.
of things like that.
So, and as we've been talking, I saw Dale put in the chat checklist, which you can tell that's my client. That's where my mind went too. So you can tell I've told him that a couple times. Um, but I hate to say it, Philip. People aren't very bright. We forget things really easily. Squirrels do happen. We lose our train of thought. And an employee is never going to care like you care. They're not. Like you might have that rare employee who does, but they're rare. They're never going to remember. They're never going to care like you do. And so if we do not have a process, if we do not have a place where we write things down, when you communicate something to somebody, like, hey, I need you to do this by blank, and here's how I need you to do it. It's got to be written down somewhere, whether that is on an agenda with your team where you put, here's the day I need it done by, here's the name, here's the description, and then you're looking at that every single day and updating it. If it's with a guy in the field, then what I'd recommend doing is saying, hey, I just typed out this text message to you or this email or whatever it is. This is what I need you to do and how I need you to do it. Can you read that back to me real quick and tell me if you have any questions? Have them literally looking at it, reading it back to you and being like, okay, do you have any questions? Nope, I feel good about it. Okay. So if it's not done correctly, we're going to have a problem because we've verbally written it down. We've written it down. I've verbally communicated it to you. You've communicated back to me. We've ensured clarity. Now all that's left is holding them accountable. And if you're doing all of those steps, Philip, and you still have somebody who's consistently effing up, then that kind of falls under negligence. That kind of falls under maybe this is not the right fit. And we can also talk about things like callback policies. Like if somebody's going out and doing work and then you're having to send them back out to redo it often, like you shouldn't be paying somebody twice to do work you've already paid them for and they effed up, And so if that ends up needing to be something where we can implement a write-up policy, a callback policy, a change order policy, we can do that. But as long as you've done your due diligence, you've written it down, you've explained it to them, you've had them verbally communicate it back to you, we've got clarity there. You've done all you can. If they're still effing up, there's a bigger problem.
Something I'll add to that too. Sorry, were you gonna say something, Philip?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, something I'll add to that is, and I don't want to say this ignorantly, I know that it's difficult to hire. It's difficult to find people in general. However, a conversation I had with some guys yesterday in Atlanta, something that's happening on the team is just a lack of respect, not necessarily to the person, but really to the process, because there's no consequence when things don't go right, because in a way we're kind of believing, or we've bought into this idea that I can't find somebody else to replace that person, or it's just going to take me as much time. So without a write-up policy of some sort, I mean, you're not tolerating this behavior because I'm sure you're talking about it, but there's no clear trajectory of just like, well, I just have to take my lump. I'll take a little bit of a verbal whipping, and then I'll get back right into it. Instead of, hey, if we keep having to have this conversation, I'm going to have to let you go. And having a clear, and then following up on it. If you do that with one individual, then the whole team can turn around. You don't have to hire or fire your entire team, but being willing to take that step, if that step is necessary, I know is a hard thing to accept, but otherwise the alternative is you bought into this idea that I can't replace somebody, they become irreplaceable, then they hold that power, and your employees are holding you hostage to your business, which is not a good place to be. It's not a place anybody wants to be. But it's this really sneaky thing that makes it seem like, well, I'm not tolerating it, but in ways, pardon me, I'm not tolerating it, but in ways it could be believed that I am, because it brings down the whole team whenever they know that this guy sucks, keeps making mistakes, but nothing ever happens. I hate working with this guy. I never want to be on a crew with him, but he still keeps sticking around. Well, maybe I should go somewhere else. And then they'll leave.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the company culture and how, someone negative in your business can affect the good team members that you do have.
Right, that makes sense. Because a lot of it, I've been sitting back and like, man, am I really choosing my words that wrong, or am I not being clear about what the expectations of did I not give them like I know I told them the start and I know I told them the end, but in my mind, am I missing out everything in the middle? Right.
Talk to in the most respectful way possible, Philip. Talk to them like they're 5-year-olds. I don't want to overplay that, but just it's got to be written down. It needs to be repeated back. Like, we need to make sure. And it's because the average employee is not thinking about what you're communicating to them. They're thinking about, I wonder what I'm going to have for lunch today. I wonder what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. I
Something that,
wonder if it's going to rain today. They're thinking about everything else.
yeah,
But
something
what
that,
And maybe that's my problem, is because mentally I feel like I am a 5-year-old, so I am communicating to everybody like they're 5, and I need to step up, maybe to teenager,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something that Alyssa mentioned earlier that I'm a huge proponent of. It's kind of this master stroke, if you will, where people come a lot with burning questions, and we can do a lot of hand holding. And that is important and it's necessary to an extent, but we have to empower the team with a simple phrase of, you've got the question for me. Great, I've got a solution. What have you thought of? Or what do you think we should do first? And they suggest something. That's an opportunity to either 1, teach, or to 2, celebrate. Hey, yeah, that's exactly right. Do that. It empowers them. They start to think for themselves. Because something I've run into is probably the worst case of this was I had a guy who had a project manager, but that project manager required him to daily create a step-by-step checklist of every single thing he did that entire day, every day. That's not a project manager. That is somebody that needs to be told every single step of the way. And it was a learned behavior at that point. His project manager had learned, I don't have to think. This is a really easy job. I just show up and I've got this checklist. I execute. I'm a doer. It's a grunt in the military. So it's a learned behavior if we handhold too much rather than empowering by saying, hey, I've got a solution for you. You have to think for yourself at some point.
Yeah.
But I've got support for you. I'm your lifeline, like a life buoy when you're drowning. But 95% of the time, you can swim.
I don't know if Ryan Schatz is still on this call. I know he was earlier. But last week, on the group call, one of his wins was he went on vacation. And when he got back from vacation, and he was like in Hawaii, so like MIA, time difference, like he was on vacation for a week, gets sick on the plane back, is out for another week. And his win, because obviously being sick was not a win, but his win last week was, I realized that they can handle things without me. That I am making myself more involved than I need to be, and I need to let go of some things. I need to empower my team. I need to trust my team. One thing that Tim Redmond, so I've been at Redmond Growth for almost 6 years now, and there was a very big shift where it went from every time I went to Tim, he was giving me answers, to every time I went to Tim or Robert Redmond, they looked at me and go, what would you suggest we do? What would you like to do here? What have you tried already? And it was really annoying. It would honestly piss me off. I'm like, I'm coming to you. Just tell me what to do. It's a lot easier. Just tell me what you think I need to do. But they realized if we don't start empowering our team, we're never going to be able to take a vacation. They're never going to be able to figure stuff out on their own. Like, I'm the one handicapping them, And so really, if you're empowering your team, if you're giving them the tools, if you're training them, if you're holding them accountable, your freedom is going to really start to be a lot more, because they're going to be a lot more independent. You're not going to need to hold hands near as much.
That makes
We've got a
sense.
couple minutes left here. And Philip, I don't know if you got a shout out here from Elevation Plumbing, said that you used to train them and that you are a great lead. So if you needed that confidence boost today, there you have it. You're doing
Thanks,
a great
Miranda.
job. Any final questions, thoughts, comments? Going once, going twice.
We've got somebody like just kind of trying to share something with us.
Clay, I don't know if you can unmute, maybe read it.
You guys brought this up as talking about getting rid of people. So this morning, this come up on my news feed. It's Kevin Costner. It says, shoot a couple of them and the rest will go home. It was just kind of a funny brought up that it kind of rolled up on my news feed as we were talking about.
The phone was listening. It was listening.
Oh, man.
Kind of dangerous.
Yes. Well, guys, we really appreciate you all asking questions, giving comments, putting stuff in the chat. like Bryce said, next week we're really going to try kind of a new group call structure where we're going to have kind of a FAQ section where any questions that you guys have, we're going to kind of open the floor to you guys. We'll still have a small presentation. We'll still be able to ask questions about that topic in that presentation, but really come to next week's group call with any questions that you have. If it's questions not for a coach, but just that you want to get other contractors or clients feedback on, bring those questions. Let's make this really way more interactive. I think that'll be way more beneficial to you guys. And so come to next week's group call ready to be a little bit chatty. And we're going to close out this group call the same way we close out everyone. So if we could get everybody who can to unmute the big 3, 2, 1 growth. I see the unmutes. All right, we're going to do a 3, 2, 1.
Grow.
Bye, guys. Have a good week.